the number million doesn't sound too far. When you hear about all the people who have a billion, the number billion doesn't seem too big to a lot of people. And so trillion mustn't be too big, right? And so it just flows off the tongue. And people say, well, a $40 trillion debt, and they don't get it. Let's talk about it this way. A trillion seconds ago was 31,688 years ago. That's a trillion seconds. So it's very important that people grasp just how big that number is. We have 150 trillion in unfunded liabilities by the government's own estimation: Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, government, military pensions. The trend can reverse and we're still screwed because we've gone too far down the rabbit hole. That's why some people say it doesn't matter who wins, we're still screwed. And I hope they're wrong, and I hope Trump gets in and changes if nothing else, the culture of Washington.
Every gold investor should consider top quality assets partnered with the best in the business, a real portfolio to profit. Gold year to date is up 22%. However, a portfolio that is positioned correctly should be up 155% this year. To learn more about how you can begin to enjoy the bull market in gold, visit crushthestreet.com/fortune.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into crushthestreet.com. I'm Kenneth Amaduri, and I'm joined today with Andy Schectman of Miles Franklin. He was recently on the show, and you all know him. He gave us some really good insight, actually, on how to strategically own precious metals, whether it's at your house or at a third-party location, and he gave us some really good insight on that. So I really suggest everyone going back and listening to that interview. He's back again on the show today, and he's actually got a really special announcement for everybody, and we're going to get into that. But first of all, I'd like to talk to Andy about what the heck is going on in the markets, just ups and downs, violent swings, and even today, on Thursday, November 3rd, we've seen just a bit of a smashdown with silver and gold here. So without any further ado, Andy Schectman, thanks for coming on the show.
Good to be here, Ken. I appreciate it very much. Crazy times, that's for darn sure.
Yeah, and as a dealer, a precious metals bullion dealer, I mean, what are you seeing on your end with what's been going on the last, let's say, 30 days here with gold and silver and the other metals?
I've seen a market that is so volatile that it is really scaring a lot of people in the respect that business is much slower than I would have anticipated right now, in all honesty. I think after 5 years of relentless beatdowns and then a couple of nice days of gains, it doesn't erase the bad memories that people have. And so even though we've seen decent gain this year, I think people are waiting for the shoe to drop, and it's always something. It's always something else that they're waiting for to get them to make a move, because that volatility and that manipulation has done a number on people, and I think that you would expect things to be really crazy right now in terms of the amount of business precious metals dealers are doing, but quite frankly, I think that a lot of people are just right now waiting to see some sort of direction, some sort of confirmation that maybe that the drubbing of the past 5 years is behind us.
Wow. Well, and it's incredible how low precious metals are, and you would think people would be much happier to purchase gold at, $1,300 here or $1,250, I mean, not too long ago, and silver here at $18, but instead they were probably pouring into it when silver was $30 and gold was $1,500. I mean, the psychology of that it just blows my mind. And I know we're all humans, we all deal with that psychology, but I mean, what is, and is that what you're seeing?
Yeah, it's an emotional thing, and unfortunately, the reason most people don't succeed in investing is that they wait until the move has been defined. Until it's a group mentality type of thing, and when the group in unison says, well, geez, it's time to jump in, that's when everyone does it. And, the time to move in any given direction in any investment is to buy when people are selling, when the sentiment is at its lowest. That is the time to buy. To buy after popular sentiment or popular wisdom would say to do so, you've already missed the majority of the move. And I think that, as I said to you last time we talked, Kenneth, I think that the price right now is a gigantic tool of misdirection. That the big money, the central planners, the people that are pulling the strings, they understand this, and for whatever their motivations are, call it repositioning, the last thing that they want is to see a mass exodus out of currency and into precious metals and into commodities. And what they have been very adept at doing through price, ignoring fundamentals, the rest of us have been, just focusing on price, they have been able to create a perception of reality that is commodities are bad and the road to retirement is simply paved with mutual funds and stock certificates. And it doesn't just encompass gold and silver and platinum, my universe. If you look at what's happening across the whole commodity universe, the whole spectrum, copper, aluminum, fossil fuels, base metals, you name it, they've all been pushed down irrationally through levered futures contracts to create a perception of reality that allows big money to come in and pickpocket, through misdirection of price, the world's commodities and build a war chest. And if you don't think a company like JP Morgan amassing north of 600 million ounces of physical silver, the largest position the world has ever seen over the last 3 or 4 years, is adept at misdirecting the public through price, you should think again. And they're just one of many who I believe is using price as a means to accumulate the world's wares before everyone realizes in unison that, hey, I need a piece of this pie, and by then the majority of it will already have been put away in the fridge.
Well, it does seem like the establishment candidate, Hillary Clinton, is dealing, obviously, the problems with the email investigation, and the market is reacting to that. We're seeing it continue to pull back because it would appear that the market had priced in a Hillary Clinton win, which means the bubble continues to grow and expand, and the JP Morgan, Wall Street, central banks, everything stays the same. And with a potential Trump win, there will be a shakeup in that whole reality. I mean, at least that's the way the market is pricing it and, reacting. I mean, any thoughts on your end, being an insider in the industry?
Well, look, I think that no matter what you want to say about Trump as a person, he puts his foot in his mouth a little too much. You could even argue he's the right message in the wrong body. But whatever he is, I would choose him 10 times out of 10 over more of the same corruption and mismanagement of our country and our world reserve currency. And quite frankly, I think regardless of your political inclinations, I think it's when you see the level of deceit and corruption that we're seeing in both her actions as they relate to the email servers, but also as it relates to the Clinton Foundation. And this is all, non-biased information. I find it repugnant to have someone of that character in the office. And what I like most about the prospects of Trump winning is just maybe he allows the markets to be set free from this ridiculous blind eye turned to by the regulators to the overt manipulation. And, as I say in most of my public speeches, we all owe Bill Murphy and Chris Powell of GATA and La Metropole Cafe, mostly GATA, a debt of gratitude for exposing the manipulation and having the courage to stand up for it for all of these years. And if Trump wins, God willing, he throws some people in jail who have created all of these distortions through overt manipulation of the free markets. And as Chris Powell is really famous for saying, there are no free markets anymore, just manipulations. And my hope is that if Trump were to get elected, we stop seeing more of this same nonsense and we see a semblance of free markets. And if that were the case, I can assure you this, that gold and silver would be priced many times higher than they are now. And then you get those people who talk about, gold being pegged to a new gold-backed dollar or world reserve currency. Well, if it were set free to trade where it should be, based upon money creation and inflation and the world economies, you could talk about it. It would be many times higher, and you could actually realistically think about adding gold as a peg to some sort of new world reserve. But the bottom line is this. As it plays out, I think that if we see more of the same with Hillary, it's more manipulation, it's more spending, it's more mismanagement, it's more deceit. With Trump, we don't know exactly what we're going to get, but my hope is that we would see more than anything some semblance of free markets that we haven't seen in a very, very long time.
Well, regardless, there's a lot of stored up energy, and as far as negative energy that needs to be released, and guys like what's his name, Mike Maloney and Jim Rickards, David Stockman, they all talk about it. Even Andy Hoffman, that hey, the markets need to correct, and precious metals are going to be the beneficiary of this. And obviously, you're a dealer, and I want to actually ask you. You had a special announcement for everybody. Everyone knows you as a really respectable bullion dealer. Been in business for many, many years. Treated your clients right. No complaints. And you know what? You guys got something really revolutionary here for everyone, and I want my audience to know about it.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, we think it is pretty special. Before I get into it, let me just digress for one moment and say that people who want to own gold out of the country are faced with IRS and Treasury Department reporting requirements in just about every case. And the IRS reporting requirements are as they pertain to FACTA, F-A-C-T-A, and the Treasury reporting requirements are as they pertain to FBAR, F-B-A-R. And these forms are largely redundant. There must not be a lot of information sharing between the IRS and the Treasury Department. But these forms say very clearly that if you own gold outside the United States, the only way that there is no reporting is if they are held in a non-financial institution like Brinks and are directly held. Directly held is a contested word, and I have at great lengths tried to have the IRS tell us what their definition of directly held is. There's a gentleman in this industry that I respect an awful lot. His name is Mark Nessman. And you can Google him, your listeners can Google him and get his newsletter. He is a taxation and privacy expert. And Mark Nessman is very vocal in saying the only directly held program that is, or the only way that metals held offshore can actually be constituted as directly held, if they're held in any form of institution, is a safe deposit box. In fact, that is what the IRS came out and said. If your listeners were to Google FBAR FACTA comparison chart, you would see the IRS came out with a chart saying gold held out of the country, directly held in a non-financial institution, is compliant to both FACTA and FBAR, and the one example they give is a safe deposit box in a non-financial institution. Well, before November 1st, a day ago, 2 days ago, that program did not exist anywhere that I know of, other than Das Safe in Austria. It's the only one that I know of that is a non-financial institution safe deposit box, fully insured. That is now what we have on an exclusive arrangement with Brinks Canada. We have safe deposit boxes fully insured in Toronto Brinks and in Vancouver Brinks, boxes of various sizes, 260 boxes, where the contents are fully insured. They're state-of-the-art, brand new safe deposit boxes, one key only. The client gets the key and the spare key, gets a certificate of what's inside the box, fully insured by Lloyd's of London, and now has access to go up and put things in or pull things out, or if not able to do so, can send the key directly to Brinks, have the business transacted under camera, and the key, a new certificate, and whatever product or funds sent back to the client. So it's what we feel is one of a kind in the industry. It is 100% invisible in terms of IRS and Treasury reporting requirements, completely and totally legally, most importantly, of course. And it is the first time that we've seen anything like this in terms of access to a non-financial institution like Brinks with a safe deposit box. So we're very, very excited about it. And people looking to get gold and silver out of the country without having to do any annualized reporting should check it out.
Well, that's interesting. And is it only gold and silver that's allowed to go in those safe deposit boxes?
Actually, a little remiss in saying that. It's gold and platinum in the safe deposit boxes. Silver would go into the segregated account. Silver is too big to go into the boxes. Just gold and platinum. We do have segregated accounts with Brinks as well. And those are audited twice per year by third-party auditors and fully insured the whole 9 yards, but those are not in the safe deposit boxes. For your listeners who have bank accounts in Canada, if you have a bank account in Canada, we can arrange to have Brinks pick up bundles of cash and have them stored in the safe deposit boxes. The people coming into the facility are not allowed to put cash into the box. They would be allowed to take it out, but would not be allowed to put cash in. It would have to come from a Brinks pickup at the bank in a shrink-wrapped package, and we can help them do that, but it has to be with a Canadian bank. We can't do that here in the U.S.
Wow, interesting. Wow, so really a lot of opportunity for diversification. Again, your risk having it in another country, if your concern is your own local government, of course. Andy, so when it comes to, when can people do this? Is it as soon as now? And what does it cost to do something like this? And why should people take advantage of it?
Well, you can check out our website dedicated to this at privatesafedepositboxes.net, privatesafedepositboxes.net. And there's an FAQ that'll answer all your questions. But I think the reason to do it is less about confiscation and more about the possibilities of currency control. And I say currency control because in the scenario where the dollar starts to rapidly lose value for whatever reason, let's say our creditors start dumping dollars. We aggravate someone and they start dumping dollars and selling treasuries rapidly, and you see interest rates spiking and the dollar falling precipitously. The first thing that would happen would be the borders would be closed to get money out of the country. And the reason they do that, Kenneth, is that when you're exchanging U.S. dollars for any other currency, you're not just making an exchange, you're selling dollars to buy something else, which exacerbates the fall, exacerbates the velocity, and exacerbates the problem. So if what hits the fan, long before they come after gold, which I believe is checkmate at best, because for them to come in and try to take people's gold would be ludicrous when the rest of the world, including communist China, is promoting it and endorsing it to their citizens. If our country were to come in and try to take gold through eminent domain, in a world where one out of a few hundred in this country even own any gold at all, in 1933 when Roosevelt did it, everyone owned gold. It was part of the currency, but now it would signal. If our creditors feared that type of nationalization of assets, everything we know of in this country would be gone. The world reserve currency, the center of free trade, etc. So I think the real reason to have money out of the United States in terms of gold is less about confiscation and local government edict and more about the real chance of the dollar losing value rapidly as it starts out a trickle and ends up a flood. And by the time it starts to happen, roll hard, you will see currency controls, and the inability to get money out of the country would be acute. Having something that has been wealth for 6,000 years, that is not reportable, held in a 100-plus-year-old institution, fully insured and invisible, is really fantastic. And there's one other really cool piece to this that I bet most of your listeners don't know. There are 5 major banks in Canada. I believe there's 5. It's BMO Harris, CIBC, RBC, Scotiabank, and TD. I think those are the 5 banks. Each one of them are mandated to buy back Canadian Maple Leafs, gold and silver, from the public. It's an agreement they have with the mint. So let's say you have, a couple dozen gold Maple Leafs held in your safe deposit box, legally invisible, held in Vancouver or Toronto. You could go across the border, go pick up your gold, and cash them in at the bank. You have options when other people don't. And I choose to not look at gold from an alarmist, worst case, pessimist, black shadow, or black cloud rather, perspective, and look at it from a perspective of keeping my options open and what if. And we live in a world all of a sudden where there's very little to compare it to in terms of where we've been and where we're going. And for that reason, I think you can never have too many options. And having some gold outside the country, privately held, very liquid, with all sorts of options, is a good problem to have and a wise decision to make even in the best of times.
Mm-hmm. Well, we've doubled the national debt under Bush. We've doubled the national debt under Obama. And if this trend continues, especially if we deal with another major problem, which we're on the verge of, I mean, this bubble's, really on the verge of bursting here, will be 40 trillion and beyond. Who knows, maybe the next 4 years or for sure in the next 8 years. So,
you know what's crazy about that, Kenneth? And I'm glad you say that, because for your listeners who have worked hard, like I have for 28 years, and yourself, we work hard, right? So when you do anything for as long as I have, you hope to become successful. And I, remember being 19 years old in this industry, hoping I could make $1 million someday. And the concept of $1 million when you're starting out as a businessman or woman, it's a lot of money, but it's within reach if you've been doing it a long time, right? So the number million doesn't sound too far. When you hear about all the people who have $1 billion, the number billion doesn't seem too big to a lot of people. And so trillion mustn't be too big, right? And so it just flows off the tongue. And people say, well, a $40 trillion debt, and they don't get it. Let's talk about it this way. 1 trillion seconds ago was 31,688 years ago. That's 1 trillion seconds. So it's very important that people grasp just how big that number is. We have 150 trillion in unfunded liabilities by the government's own estimation: Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, government, military pensions. The trend can reverse and we're still screwed because we've gone too far down the rabbit hole. The numbers have gotten too big. And, so I think that the trend has already gotten too far. It's all baked into the cake. It's a question of how does it play out, how fast does it play out, and who comes out on top. So I think that I would argue that regardless of what the trend does, that's why some people say it doesn't matter who wins, we're still screwed. And I hope they're wrong, and I hope Trump gets in and changes if nothing else, the culture of Washington and gives us patriotism again instead of pessimism and disdain, the way that a lot of people look at what's happened to this country. So I think the trend doesn't have to reverse, and we're already in trouble. It's a matter, I think it's being naive to not protect yourself from what appears mathematically to be an inevitability.
Yeah, and that's what's sad. I mean, you're talking about people who've worked hard their whole life and could potentially be on at great risk of losing large percentages of their retirement and their ability to, quite frankly, happily live their life. And, that's exactly what we're talking about here, preserving your wealth and having a future and giving people options for a bright future and maintaining your purchasing power. So with that, Andy, any final words of wisdom you'd like to share? And please do, close with ways people can reach out to you if they'd like to contact you at Miles Franklin.
Well, first of all, Kenneth, I want to say that I really appreciate you having me on the show again, and it means a lot, and I'm always willing to come on and bend your ear whenever you have an opening.
I thank you for that. Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. As far as Miles Franklin, let me just leave your listeners with one thought, and it's important. And I want everyone to think about this and know that I'm dead serious. The precious metals industry is akin to the Wild West. It is a non-regulated industry federally. There have been a lot of companies that have taken a lot of money from people over the last 3 years, in particular, over $70 million just from 3 companies alone. And I think it's very, very important that your listeners realize that reputation in this industry is more important than anything, as far as I'm concerned. Even if it costs you $2 an ounce on a gold eagle or 15 cents on a silver eagle, reputation is everything. And we have as good of a reputation in this industry as anyone ever has, 27 years and not one complaint. But you know what? The state of Minnesota doesn't care about that. The state of Minnesota is the only state in America that regulates this industry. We have a very large surety bond in place. We have annualized background checks of every employee and principal and compliance regulations that no one else in the United States has to abide by. And Kenneth, that's probably why over 90% of my competition throughout the United States has boycotted the state of Minnesota. Most of my competitors will not send product into the state of Minnesota because they too would have to be compliant and subservient to the Minnesota state regulations. What it basically means is, if you do business with Miles Franklin, you're buying an insurance policy along with your coins. You cannot get screwed. We cannot rip you off because there's an enormous surety bond that the state of Minnesota would remunerate your listeners immediately and send a bounty hunter to find me if I decide to take money and head off to Tahiti. And as tongue-in-cheek as that sounds, in the last 3 years, literally over $70 million from 3 companies have been taken, and I think it's very important to keep that in mind. As far as how they reach us, so the private safe deposit boxes.net is our new program. They can check it out there. Our normal storage website is, what is that? Let me just give that to you real quick. I'm embarrassed. It's a brand new site. That is preciousmetalstorage.net, singular, preciousmetalstorage.net. And then, of course, there's milesfranklin.com, where Andy Hoffman publishes our free daily newsletter. Kenneth, you know Andy. He's tireless and committed and honest and brave and all of the things that we would need right now for someone to show us where we're heading. Andy is as good of a leader in this industry as anyone. So check out our free newsletter, milesfranklin.com.
Yeah. Well, you guys are on the front lines. Great guys, great company. Andy Schectman, everyone. Andy, thanks so much for coming on the show.
You got it, Ken. Thank you, buddy.